Welcome to New York Got Game.
Welcome back to another edition of New York Got Game. A lot to talk about this week in New York basketball. Got to talk about the Knicks and the Liberty. As for the Knickerbockers, they are still looking for a head coach. The NBA season, it's almost over, and the offseason, we're about to be in full swing, although some of you have already been in full offseason mode, talking about trades, talking about free agent signings. We're going to get into all that. And for the Liberty, they've lost 2 out of their last 3 games. Is there concern around the defending champs? They have a big road trip coming up. We're going to see how they do. So this week, we've got 2 great guests to talk about the Knicks and the Liberty. Let's get right into it.
The Knicks are heating up.
All right, the Knicks offseason is officially heating up. Mike Brown and Taylor Jenkins have both interviewed for the open head coaching job. And we could be getting close to a decision, or it could take a little bit longer. But that's just one piece of what's shaping up to be a pivotal summer in New York. The team has roster decisions to make. Free agency is looming. And a draft pick is in play, along with a trade market that could explode any week now. To break it all down, I'm joined by my guy, Knicks beat reporter for the New York Post, Stefan Bondy, is here with me now. Steph, we are officially in summer. How is your summer going thus far?
It's good, man. It's a little bit different this year because there's a coaching search. The Knicks had Tom Thibodeau for a while. But I've done coaching searches before, and it's like riding a bike. So I'm back on.
Back on the bike. You are not going to fall off. You know how to get this done. We'll see when the Knicks get this done. So let's start with the coaching search, Steph, because when you look at the coaches who interviewed for the open Knicks job this week that we know of, Mike Brown and Taylor Jenkins, what are you hearing in terms of what the Knicks think of both of them? And of the two, in your opinion, who's the best fit for the roster right now?
Yeah, so I don't know what kind of impressions they made during the interview process, but I heard going into the interview process that I think Taylor Jenkins would have had the edge. There was some concerns about Mike Brown being, kind of the old school, almost Tibbsian thing with how he approaches players and teams. So I think Taylor Jenkins, would be my pick as well, just because of the what seems to me like untapped potential. He took a team in Memphis that had a lot of young players, and he took them to regular season success. Obviously, the playoffs were a big concern. He lost to he lost series to 2 lower seeds, so that would be something that if I'm the Knicks, I'm looking at. But listen, I think the reason you can almost dismiss a lot of the reasons he got fired in Memphis is because he was given a position where he was forced to take on assistant coaches who were opposite in terms of philosophy. He had to take on a different offense that was dictated by one of the assistant coaches and dictated by the front office, and it just seemed like a terrible situation. But one thing with Taylor, I will say that could be concerning is kind of how Ja Morant spiraled personally and got the suspensions, how he wasn't able to rein in Dillon Brooks. I think those are things that you got to look at when you look at Taylor Jenkins, but certainly his success in the regular season, taking a young team and an unproven team to those heights was impressive.
Let me also ask you this, Steph, about Jenkins. Would you have any concern, considering he coached in such a smaller market in Memphis, about his temperament and ability to coach in New York and handle the media in New York? Should that be a concern, or do you think that'll be a factor in terms of deciding on him?
Maybe, but in talking to somebody who had coached with him in Milwaukee, he's a great communicator. I think he's well spoken. I think that he can handle those kind of things, just based on I don't know Taylor Jenkins personally, but just based on my conversations with people who know him. So listen, it's tough because it's a whole different animal, New York City than Memphis. And believe me, the stuff that was going on with Ja Morant, it would have been times 100 if it happened in New York City. But I thought he handled that situation as best he could in the smaller market. And you just got to put faith, I guess, if you're the Knicks and you're thinking about hiring Taylor Jenkins, that he can handle something on a grander scale.
Yeah, well, that's what you got to do. If that's your guy, you got to believe it's your guy and go forth with that. And I'll ask you this, in evaluating this roster, and if we assume that the core stays the same, which Knicks player or players do you think could benefit the most from a new coaching staff and system right now?
I don't know. I think that, I'm still on the record of saying firing Tibbs was a mistake. I think that you're watching how close they were to winning a championship. based on what Indiana's doing to OKC. I think they overachieved in a lot of areas. I think every player had a career year. It's hard to say what players can improve on. I know there were gripings among certain players who said they didn't know their roles and the communication was poor, and that's a problem that has plagued Tom Thibodeau at multiple stops in Minnesota and in Chicago. But his philosophy was always just win and the problems will go away. Um, Problems don't go away. These are human beings. They need communication. They need things relayed to them. They need to feel appreciated. And so, I think that when you're looking at a new coach, you get a better communicator. I think that's number one, and see where it goes from there. But it's hard for me to say that players can benefit other than the bench. Obviously, we don't know who's going to be on the bench. But Taylor Jenkins in Memphis played a lot of people. And I'm not saying Taylor Jenkins is getting the job, by the way, because I know that they're going to continue moving on with different interviews. I heard that they're moving on this week to some assistant coaches. I did hear that they did not request, at least as of yesterday, they did not request permission to talk to Johnny Bryant, so he was not part of that initial list. But I have heard some names that not ready to report yet. But I heard that they are moving on to some further candidates this week, and we'll see where it goes. So I don't think Taylor Jenkins, by any imagination, is a slam dunk, but I'm just using him as an example here.
Got you there. Are you shocked about not at least at this point putting in a request for Johnny Bryant? Is that shocking to you, or a lot of people expected him to get a shot or be looked at here? Is that shocking to you that they haven't put in a request for him?
Shocking, I wouldn't say. I mean, listen, I think early on everybody connected the dots just based on his connection to a lot of the players and the organization. And listen, it's when you're talking about the Knicks, CAA is always important. He's a CAA client. So is Taylor Jenkins. So, I think everybody connected the dots, but it became more obvious as the search went on that he was not a priority.
Gotcha on that. All right. Well, if this head coaching search gets wrapped up soon, how much input do you think the new head coach will have on roster decisions this summer? Whether this coaching decision comes before the draft, after the draft, before free agency, after free agency, how much input will they have in the roster this summer?
Well, I don't know. I can't answer that question because I really don't know how much I mean, listen, ideally you want synergy from the front office and the coaching staff in terms of building a building a roster. Obviously the draft is coming up very soon. So the Knicks have the 50th pick. I reported very early on in the coaching process that the Knicks were going to take their time, that they didn't feel pressure to have a coaching spot for the draft, and that they were even comfortable, if necessary, to not have a coach until summer league starts. So they don't have much flexibility. They have the 50th pick, like I said. They have the mid-level exception to use. Unless you're talking about a major trade, which is always possible, then I don't think that the input of a coach right now is that important, unless you're talking about a big trade.
No, that would make sense, and that kind of leads me to the next part in terms of the decision the Knicks have to make, or decisions, I should say, to make in terms of free agents from this year's roster. Does this front office want to make changes with role players, and particularly we're talking about the bench, or are they looking at this roster and saying, hey, we want to keep building continuity with this core that we have?
Sorry, say that. Do they want to build out the bench?
Yeah, do they want to make changes to the role players on this team, particularly on the bench, or do they want to build continuity? So, is it possible to see guys like a Landry Shamet come back?
Yeah, it's certainly possible.
Yeah.
It's certainly possible. And I think, when we talk about who the coach is, maybe that, if the coach arrives before free agency or during free agency, because when we talk about the Landry Shamets of the world, and the campaigns of the world, and even the Precious Achiuwas of the world, sometimes they don't sign until late in free agency. So, I think Campaign signed with the Knicks during summer league. Yeah.
Yep.
So listen, when you're talking about role players and guys signing on minimum contracts, a lot of times that doesn't play out till much later in the process. So I expect the Knicks to have a head coach in there. at that point, and maybe the coach will decide who he wants to bring on the bench.
Yeah, that'll be interesting to see. Let's look at the upcoming NBA draft on Wednesday. You just mentioned this. Knicks, they have the 50th pick in this year's draft. Considering this team, and you just talked about the flexibility or lack of flexibility they have with their financial situation, do you think they'll either look to select a veteran college player who can contribute immediately, or will they go the draft and stash route? How do you think this will play out for the Knicks in the draft?
Yeah, I think that they have enough young guys that they want to incorporate into the rotation this year, where they don't have to draft somebody that they need for the roster. I mean, you got 3 picks from last year's draft that they're expecting to make a jump possibly into the rotation. When you talk about Tyler Kolek, Pacome Dottie, and Ariel Hukporti. I was talking to somebody during the season about how important, the Knicks view Pacome Dottie's summer, because he's got a lot of upside, and he's gonna go to summer league, and we'll see where he goes. But he's the guy that I've always kind of like circled as having the most potential. And then they also have, and excuse me, I don't know how to pronounce his name. They got the former second round pick in the Karl Anthony Towns trade. He is arriving for summer league as well. I think he was the 31st pick. So they got a lot of young options where, using the 50th pick on somebody to make the roster and to take up some of the cap space just doesn't make a lot of sense.
Yeah, I was thinking about that too. So it could be a stash situation, could trade it. A lot of options there for the Knicks. Final thing for me here, Steph. There's a belief among some people that I've spoken to around the NBA that this could be a very active trade market this offseason. Do you think the Knicks will be involved in trade activity this summer, or will it be quiet on that front?
Yeah, I mean, obviously everybody's waiting for Kevin Durant. I had reported that they are not going to be in the mix for Kevin Durant. So I don't know where they can go other than, if where everybody's waiting for Giannis Antetokounmpo. So if he makes himself available, then all bets are off, and it's going to just be insanity this summer. Some of the indications lately is that Giannis will not be asking out. But listen, there's always surprises thrown in there too. I don't think many people predicted that they'd be trading for Karl Anthony Towns before the season started last season, and they did. The Mikal Bridges trade was maybe a little bit less of a surprise, but the certainly the haul that they had to give for Mikal Bridges was a surprise. So anything can happen, and we just got to wait to see how it unfolds, because I can't give you a prediction.
No, you can't. Can't predict anything in the NBA. Can't predict anything around the Knicks. Who knows what could happen? But summer's here. Off-season's here for the Knicks. Could be busy. Could be quiet. We'll see. Either way, Stefan Bondy, he's on the bike for the coaching search. He'll be on top of it. He won't fall off. That's for sure. Steph, appreciate the time, man. We'll talk soon.
All right, man. I'll talk to you.
So while the Knicks are trying to figure out who's going to lead them next, the Liberty, they're just trying to stay on the floor. Jonquel Jones, she re-aggravated her ankle Thursday night in Phoenix, and now the defending champs, they've lost 2 of their last 3, heading into a crucial 4-game, 10-day road trip. So what's going on with this team? How big of a concern is this stretch without Jonquel? And joining me now is a co-founder of the 9450, a platform that covers women's hoops at every level. It's a guy who's been on the show with me before, but joining me in studio for the first time, my guy, Kevin Lewis. Kev, what's going on, man?
Hey, what up? What it is? What's popping? I am doing well. How about yourself?
I'm doing good, man. You're a native New Yorker. It's good to have you back home. You were in town. You hit me up. You wanted to talk some Liberty. I was like, yo, of course, you got to come through.
Absolutely.
And then the other night, you hit me. You went with your family to the Barclays Center. First time you got to see a Liberty game. The kids got to see Ellie. What did you think of the whole vibe?
Oh, the vibe was amazing. The atmosphere, top notch. Really, really enjoyed myself covering the game, and I think my family enjoyed themselves even more just being a part of the game. So, had fun with Ellie, took pictures.
Yeah, gotta do that.
It was great. It was great.
You got to do that. That is great. Anytime you can have fun, it's good. But let's talk about the Liberty, because we got to start talking about Jonquel Jones. Bit of a timeline forming around her. She had the ankle injury. She re-aggravates it. You saw it in person on Thursday night. How much of a concern is this ankle injury for you with Jonquel, and how much do you think it affects the Liberty and what they're trying to do in terms of defending their title?
Yeah, so I think this concern is more twofold because there's one thing about Jonquel Jones. When Jonquel Jones is on the floor, it's already a positive for the New York Liberty. When she's off the floor, that positive just comes down a little bit more than what we want. And I think with this one, it's more of a concern because she re-aggravates an injury that she's already had.
Right.
And coming back, she was trying to get a win back up under her. And I think that from this part, when you also have Leonie Phoebus gone for AmeriCup, I think it draws a little bit more of a concern because the defense now becomes a little bit more concerning. So from that standpoint, I think that's a concern. From another standpoint, I think that it could be another opportunity for someone like a Niara Sabally, who is also nursing a particular injury from a knee standpoint as well. Maybe she can get a little bit more minutes. Maybe she can get a little bit more experience as a starter. And then Kennedy Burke. Kennedy Burke is having an amazing season right now, and her experience would be a little bit more with this injury as well. So I think from a concern standpoint, you definitely want to be a little bit more cognizant for Jonquel Jones because this is an injury that's been re-aggravated, but at the same time, it'll get that experience for Niara and Kennedy. But we have to see the Liberty be a little bit more aggressive, especially on rebounding and a little bit more on our defense because with Jonquel Jones, she sets the tone defensively, and she's definitely a bigger decoy offensively.
I think the thing that I like about what you said, there's a lot of times when people think about injuries, they're like, oh man, this person went down. But it does create an opportunity, in this case, for other ladies to step up here and show what they can do. Niara, who had some big games in the finals last year throughout the playoffs, this is now a pretty big stage for her to show what she can do. But how different is this team, Kev, without Jonquel Jones offensively and defensively, because she does so much. She's the anchor of that defense on the back line. What do you think the biggest void that the Liberty have to fill with her absence? What's the biggest void that they have to fill with her if she's not in the lineup for, let's say, another couple games?
Yes, and one thing that you mentioned is that she's the anchor of this defense. Now, with her and Leonie Phoebus, their defensive rating is at about an average of about 82.5, right? So when you lose those two, and when you lose Jonquel in particular, that anchor of the defense, it kind of exposes the Liberty a little bit more on dribble penetration because you don't have that 6'6" body and that almost 7-foot length coming at you at the rim blocking your shot after you blow by the guards. So that's one important thing that you lose. So again, with Niara Sabally having to step up into that particular rotation, we haven't seen that too much defensively from Niara, but she has improved a lot. What's going to happen is a lot of the guards in our wings will have to step up a lot more in communicating more on that front line so that the back line can have just a little bit more wiggle room. So what I did see in particular on Thursday in that third quarter when they did make that little run, the Liberty that we're talking about, they did hard hedge and deny very, very hard at the top of the key against the Phoenix Mercury, and that worked a lot because we did see a lot of deflections from Taj Cloud and a lot of deflections from Maureen Johannes and Sabrina Ionescu and also Brianna Stewart, and that led to fast break points. But for some reason, they got away from that, and that's how Phoenix was able to go on that run that they did at the end of the third quarter. But we're going to have to see more of that in the beginning of games. Jonquel Jones, she leads all first half in, I believe it's like 11.8 in positive points. So with you losing that, I think they go down from 11.8 to about 1.8. So that's a huge difference.
Yeah.
So the bench, of course, obviously, they're going to have to step up. We're going to have to see more bench play, more wing play, especially from someone like a Rebecca Gardner, if you will. And also, the others that are coming off of the bench, they're definitely going to have to step up in the absence of Jonquel Jones.
Yeah, it's a big absence. It's definitely offense and defense, so there's a lot that you want to see. You hope that ladies are able to step up. But when we look at this Liberty team recently, right, and I talked about this at the top, Kev, They've dropped 2 out of their last 3 games. Okay, so they lose to the Fever. You saw it in person. They lose to the Mercury on Thursday night. And I thought in that game, look, Stewie was good offensively. She has a 35-piece in that game. But you saw some issues with some other things. You saw them lose the rebounding battle. When you look at these, let's say the last 3 games you've seen for the Liberty, right, because they've lost 2 of them, what's the biggest concern for you in what you've seen with the team in this span where they've lost 2 out of their last 3?
It's just more so of the sloppiness that I'm seeing. A lot of turnovers. I believe there was 20 turnovers in this game on Thursday. A lot of those turnovers came in the first half. The most of those turnovers came in the first half, and some came in the fourth quarter where they went on that huge run Phoenix did. But I think it's just more so the sloppiness and not executing in the half court. When they execute in the half court, it makes it so much harder to beat them. And because they had that sloppiness, it just did not look good. And especially in this game versus the Phoenix Mercury, you saw that a lot in that first half, but they were able to sustain a little bit of that because of talent. Obviously, everybody knows that the New York Liberty has arguably the most talented roster in the WNBA. Jonathan Kolb has did an amazing job this offseason. So the talent alone is going to keep them in games. But when you're not executing and when you're not doing what you're supposed to do on the offensive and defensive end, a lot of that is going to result into some losses of games, right? And we saw that in the loss to the Fever. We also saw that in the loss to the Phoenix Mercury. Obviously, of course, Jonquel Jones, a big piece of that, and she was not a part of, obviously, the Fever game, and she wasn't a part of the latter half of the Mercury game. So that's the important piece that we need to see the New York Liberty get better at, their execution, and just limit their turnovers. They are a very high-paced team this year. Last year, not so much. They really allowed teams to, well, they dictated pace for the most part of their season. And this season, I think they've upped that pace because they have the players to do it.
Right.
But when you have that type of pace and the way that you want to run, sloppiness will come into effect. So when you don't execute that, as a result, you can force other teams to score off of those turnovers. And I believe the Phoenix Mercury had 26 points off of turnovers, if I'm not mistaken. So it's definitely important for them to execute a lot better. Once they execute a lot better, they're going to be okay, because that's really, from what I've seen, the only issue. And defensively is just more so communication on the back end of the defense. And of course, again, when you lose a Leonie Phoebus, and you lose a Jonquel,
right,
that's very, very difficult, right? So once they get the communication going, I think that they will be okay. Again, they're extremely talented, so I am not concerned at all from an offensive standpoint. It's just more so on that defensive standpoint that we just need to see a little bit better execution.
Yeah, execution is always important. I'm going to bring up another E word that Sandy Brondello brought up after that game in the loss to the Mercury, and she said she thought the team lacked energy. That made me perk up a little bit, because I'm like, okay, this is a team that won a championship. Most of the roster is back the same. You're kind of wondering, how could they lack the energy here? So I ask you this, is this just what we see sometimes with defending teams, where you have a little bit of a championship hangover, or is this just mid-season growing pains, and they've got to clean up some of the stuff that you just mentioned in talking about? What is it when you see lack of energy and you hear Coach Brondello talk about that? It seems like she's kind of telling the team to wake up a little bit here.
I do agree with Coach Brondello on that note, but I will say I don't think it's any type of hangover. Okay. I really, really believe that this New York Liberty team is extremely hungry to go back-to-back, and they've executed the roster for it to be a back-to-back season first. The second thing is, when you have someone like a Natasha Cloud, who is the biggest energy builder in the type of energy that she brings, it's more of a gravitational pull for her teammates to pull that energy. Yes, I think the air went out of the arena when Jonquel went down, because it was more of a fright, because a lot of people saw her kind of grab the knee first,
yes,
and not the ankle Thank goodness it is a right ankle injury. But at the same time, when that type of energy is sucked out of the room in that manner, sometimes you're not thinking about execution. However, what I see in this team, once they get that energy and perk up that energy, like Coach Sandy Brondello said, and once they execute, they're still going to be very, very, very much good to go in front of whatever team that they play on any given night. We saw that energy against the Atlanta Dream. They were down 17 points and they end up winning that game by 5. So we saw that energy perk up a little bit. We saw the execution get a lot better in that game. Unfortunately, we didn't see that in the Phoenix Mercury game. And Phoenix, by no means, is a very, very good team. Very good team. So I would not I would not do that to the Phoenix Mercury respectively. So what I do see is that energy, as Coach Sandy Brondello said, it does need to perk up a little bit. But once that energy perks up, they have to execute. I think the execution is a little bit more that we need to be focused on as opposed to the energy. Because once the energy is there, you're good. Because again, we're a talented team. It's just that execution. Execution just needs to step up a little bit.
Just to continue off that, just to piggyback off that a little bit, because I agree with you on that. How much of it is that you need to see that energy from the start? Because at Liberty have been getting off, especially in this recent stretch, some slower starts. We're seeing, and some of that is with the Jonquel injury against Indiana. Same thing here against the Mercury. But how much of it is them playing a complete game and executing for 48 minutes? It was just showing a little bit more of that energy from the start of these games.
It's very important because, just like you said, championship fatigue is real.
No, it's real.
I will say that. Championship fatigue is real. I do believe that I don't necessarily believe that it is championship fatigue because this is a team that's been like this the last 2 or 3 years. They always start off slow. For some reason, they always start off slow. It's always those odd number quarters that gets to the New York Liberty, right? The first quarter and the third quarter. So, like you said, if they can execute better and if they can perk up that energy early in the game, I think that with the way that Coach Sandy Brondello staggers her team and her roster in the way that certain players play, certain ladies play, I think they'll be good to go. That's the biggest question for me for this particular team. How you're able to start games and how Coach Sandy Brondello and the staff are able to stagger those minutes. Are we going to trust our bench more? I want to see a little bit more Jalen Sherrod. I think Jalen Sherrod has an incredible knack defensively, first off, because she sets the tone. I call her kind of like a mini Natasha Cloud, if you will. And I know that Natasha Cloud has been a great mentor to Jalen Sherrod. She has been a great mentor to Marquisha Davis as well, the youngins, and they have been incredible, more so Jalen Sherrod. But I do want to see her play a little bit more. So it's going to be also with with Coach Sandy Brondello trusting her bench just a little bit more, giving them that trust factor and giving them that energy so that in that first quarter, the starters can do what they need to do. And then when the bench come in and when you start staggering those minutes, that's where you're already up 20 and you can just go into your regular fundamental motions of the offense, and the same on the defensive end. But it has to start early. They have to execute a lot better early, and they have to make sure that they're doing it with a sense of urgency.
Yeah, getting off to a good start, absolutely important. I love that you mentioned some key bench players there in Jalen Sherrod, who's been looking for opportunity. She's been a guest on the show, looking for that opportunity to try to play and get more. We've seen what she can do.
Absolutely.
She can definitely have an impact on defense and offense. But Liberty right now, Kev, 4-game road trip they're heading to. And folks, this is who they have to play on this road trip. They will be playing the Seattle Storm. Then they travel to play the Valkyries for the first time in San Francisco. Then to play the Mercury, so a rematch real quick with the Mercury, and then another rematch in the ATL against the Dream. So this is 4 games, quality opponents that they're playing on this 4-game trip. Which of these games do you think will be the toughest test for them, and what do you need to see out of the Liberty on this 4-game trip?
Well, first things first, from the game standpoint, The toughest matchups that I'm looking at right now is probably the Seattle Storm. First off, the Seattle Storm is incredibly hungry. They just defeated the Las Vegas Aces
Fantastic
last
win
night.
for them.
Fantastic win for them. So I think they're going to be a little bit more hungry to face the defending champs. First off, everybody is going to be hungry facing the defending champs.
Yeah, they're going to get their A game.
Absolutely. So this is, if I'm not mistaken, the first game that they would play against
Yes.
each other. So what I see there is going to be a bit concerning without Jonquel Jones, because the front court of Seattle is very, very good. Neko Abumake and Ezi Megbagor, they're very, very good. Of course, you have Skylar Diggins. Skylar Diggins, she's going to be amazing from a guard standpoint. And then you have Gabby Williams,
who's been balling out.
Man. 8 steals the other night. So that's going to be amazing. So that's one concern for me. Another concern is maybe a little bit of revenge in Atlanta. I think that Atlanta is probably going to try to seek revenge after blowing a 17-point lead. We did see them blow a huge lead versus the Washington Mystics the other night. Luckily, with the miss free throw of Brittany Sykes, that game ended up winning that game 91-90. However, I do think that they will be a little bit more focused as well. I think that being that with Jonquel Jones already being out, the New York Liberty will already have their feelings of how to execute without Jonquel Jones. So I'm not too concerned about their lineups, their roster makeup, how they try to execute without Jonquel, because they've been doing it. One thing that will stand out from a game standpoint, I do believe, again, is that Storm game in the Emerald City, and then the revenge game versus the Atlanta Dream.
So I do find it interesting that you do think the two most challenging games on this trip could be to start the trip and to end the trip.
I do.
So that could be very interesting in setting the tone. And with that said, when you look at this, the last thing I guess for me here is, when you look at this trip, what would be a successful trip in your eyes for this team? Is 2-2 going to be good enough? Because when you look at what the Liberty are doing right now, and they're a couple games now behind the Lynx, who are still the best record in the league, and they want to keep in that title conversation. I think the Liberty will always be there, but you want to be there. Do they need to be 2-2, or do you need a better record than that for them to make a statement on this trip? Is this an important trip in your eyes for the Liberty, and do they need to make a statement on this trip?
Yes, this is a very important trip. And I believe every trip is a very important trip. I believe that they need to go 3-1 in this.
3-1
trip.
is what you need. Okay.
This is what I need from the New York Liberty, because when you set the tone in this magnitude, we're looking at let's say three of the 4 games are very, very crucial for you. It's that Seattle game, it's also the Phoenix game, and it's the Atlanta game. Now, with respect to Golden State, because Golden State is playing phenomenal basketball right now.
A lot of vets on that expansion team.
Tons of vets on that expansion team. So I will respect them as well. However, I think that being that they've played them a few times already, I think that they have kind of like that formula to kind of finally just get it over with, if you will. And I do say that with a lot of respect. But I think that from this standpoint, they have to be extremely aggressive on this 10-day West Coast road trip, because when they start off very, very aggressive, you're already setting the tone to the other teams in the league. Listen, okay, we dropped one against the Fever. We dropped one against the Mercury. But we're still arguably the number 1 team in this league. And of course, they're fighting that with the Minnesota Lynx, and the Minnesota Lynx also have some concerns of their own with Nafisa Kahleah and the back injury. So hopefully, she's getting well there. But when we're talking about the New York Liberty are also the defending champs. And you do not want to start this road game off very, very slow. You don't want to do that. You don't want to lose to the Seattle Storm and then end up having a trap game versus the Golden State Valkyries. And then now you're already starting off in an 0-2 hole. So you have to start off very, very aggressive. You also don't want to start off too aggressive where you win that first game and then you have another trap game once again in that Valkyries game. So you really, really, really want to start aggressive. If I were to put a prediction on it, I think I would have them at 3-1.
Okay, so you're going with the 3-1.
I'm going with the 3-1. I want them to go 4-0, obviously, but I'm gonna be real. I'm gonna be a little bit realistic, and I think they can go 3-1 in this road trip.
Hey, I think Liberty fans would sign up for 3-1. I think that would be fantastic for them. And look, I agree with you. It's an important road trip.
Absolutely.
I'm not saying there's doubters out there, Kev. I'm just saying they lost 2 out of 3. So, you're going to hear some of the talk. Hey, are they okay? I think they'll be fine. I love the E word you use. They've got to execute. We will see how they do on this road trip. Big one for the New York Liberty. That's my guy, Kevin Lewis, back home in New York, co-founder of the 9450. Like I said, one of the best platforms covering women's hoops. You see this guy on here with me a lot. He will be on this show more to talk about Liberty basketball. Kev, man, it's a pleasure. It was great to have you in studio. We'll definitely do this again.
Absolutely. Hey, thank you for having me. Shout out to the 9450, all of the crew out there. One love.
Appreciate you, man. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, so it will be an interesting next 10 days or so for the New York Liberty. I personally am not that concerned about what we've seen from the Liberty over the past week. I think as they get a bit healthier with John Cole Jones, getting back into the fold, and they got to be a little cautious with her, I think they'll be all right. But this is, make no mistake about it, a big road trip upcoming for the defending champions. As for the Knicks, all eyes are still going to be on this coaching search. When we heard from Steph, doesn't sound like they are in any rush to get this done. I don't think that matters as much in the situation that the Knicks are, but I would keep an eye on what they might do with the draft and how active things could be in the NBA world with trades coming up at the draft this week. Then we'll have our eye on free agency, and we should have some more news about that and possibly a free agency show, New York Got Game style, for the people. We'll keep you locked in with more details on that coming up. But thanks to my guest this week, Stefan Bondy, the great beat writer here for the New York Post covering the Knicks, and my guy Kevin Lewis coming and joining me in studio to talk some Liberty basketball. Always, we have to do this. We got to thank the people that make this show look good. Producer Erica Block doing a great job. Nick Federico doing the amazing job that he does always as the associate producer. And editing the show for the first time, our editor, Eddie Guerrero, doing a fantastic job. I'm Dexter Henry. We are going to peace out. We'll catch you next week on New York Got Game.
And thanks for watching New York Got Game. Boom shakalaka.